What up guys, welcome back to 88-Bit Tech. I'm AJ and today I've got a $400 semi-white gaming PC that can play AAA titles at 1080p settings just fine and even some titles at 1440p, but let's just get straight into the build. We'll start off with the graphics card. So we've had some changes to the build since I've got all these parts. I decided to use an ASRock RX 6600 XT in this build because it made sense with the rest of the PC components I have lying around for separate builds. But I paid $150 for the ASRock RX 6600 XT, which is a pretty decent price and doesn't raise the overall price of the build to that much higher. Comparing this GPU with the tried and true Ryzen 5 3600, beast of a CPU, 6-core, 12 threads, more than capable of handling the RX 5700. I got this used off the local market for $49 US. We're cooling that with not this Rotanium cooler. This is an absolutely terrible cooler and I do not recommend it. I got this for $2 AUD, so it's about $1.30 USD for this cooler, and it is 100% not worth it. It looks cool. It's got the white blades to kind of match our white black setup, but I ended up not using it because I was thermal throttling like crazy with this cooler. I ended up switching back to the stock cooler and I painted the shroud white to match the system, and it's performing infinitely better than that cooler ever could. And for storage, I went with the 1TB KingSpec M.2 NVMe Gen 3x4 SSD that I've reviewed on my channel before. It was on sale, so I got it for $42. We're putting this on the Gigabyte B550MK. Bought this brand new from MSY locally. I paid $71.88 for this. I've used this motherboard before, so it's plenty reliable and it's going to handle the system quite well. For the RAM, we got a new kit of Patriot Blackout Series Viper 16 gigabytes 2x8 gigabyte kit. It's a CL16 kit and I paid $40.35 for that. This is all being powered by this Gigabyte P650B 80 plus bronze power supply. It is a tier C unit, so you can have some peace of mind with that. For the 650 watt power supply, I did pay $49 for it. And it's all going into this brand new Deepcool McCube 110 micro ATX case that I got off the used market. The couple that sold it to me, they accidentally bought the wrong case for their needs and they couldn't return it, so I was able to take advantage of that and get a pretty good deal on it. For this case, I paid $26 USD. Alright, that's all the components for the build. Let's get to building. But first, say hello to Totoro, B1, Dumbo, my new 88-bit sign. All up, this whole setup cost me $436.41. Taxes and delivery included, of course. Really great value, and it's going to be able to crush games at 1080p and even some games at 1440p. Let's get started. As we get into the benchmarks, please note that all FPS values in the following graphs were first recorded without AMD Relive capture software running, so they are accurate to real-world performance, and the values you see in the MSI Afterburner in the top left reflect FPS with Relive running. First up, we have Armored Core 6 at 1080p max settings. We saw an average FPS of 103, 1% low of 82, and a 0.1% low of 59. You can absolutely run this game at 1440p with about an 80 plus average FPS.
destroyed.
For Counter-Strike 2, at 1080p, very high settings, no upscaling, we got an average of 138, 1% low of 79, and a 0.1% low of 65. With Cyberpunk on ultra settings, no upscaling, this combo can easily hit 60 plus FPS on average, but that's boring. So I'm also going to be using the FSR3 mod with frame generation and AMD fluid motion frames enabled for the ultimate smooth high refresh gaming session. Okay, so let's go ahead and pop into the settings here. So you can see we have the resolution set to DLSS. We're running at 6600 XT. But DLSS is actually FSR3 for this mod. We have it set to quality. It's on ultra settings. Motion blur is turned off. You can see, scroll through. Yep, ultra settings. Go ahead and hit apply for that. I also have AMD fluid motion frames on as well, but it doesn't capture in normal recording. So I recorded it with my camera externally, and I'm just manually put it in the top right corner. So on 1080p ultra settings, FSR3 set to quality with frame generation enabled and AMD fluid motion frames enabled, we got an average of 110 FPS with a 1% low of 46 and a 0.1% low of 42. AMD fluid motion frames is a really cool technology. As you can see in the top right corner, it's actually more than doubling our frame rate, easily hitting the refresh rate of our monitor, which is 165 Hz. So I could lock it, but I'm not really experiencing any screen tearing, so I'm leaving it unlocked at the moment. On Fortnite 1080p settings, performance mode, epic textures, we got an average of 233, 1% low of 138, and a 0.1% low of 27. Forza Horizon 4 1080p ultra settings with fluid motion frames enabled, we got an average of 135 frames per second, 1% low of 116, and a 0.1% low of 27. This is a bit of a strange result. When I recorded it with these settings and relive running, the 0.1% low was 92 FPS. So I'm not sure what's happening there, but the beauty of AMD FMF is it's practically built for racing games, since you don't have sharp camera movements that disable it temporarily. You pretty much run at double your base frame rate the entire time. So for Hogwarts Legacy, you guys, I did get FSR3 mod working on this with a bit of trial and error. running it at ultra settings, no ray tracing. We got it at 1080p DLSS, which is NVIDIA or FSR3 at the quality. You have to have sharpness set to 0 and frame gen is on, otherwise it won't work. So I did this test with FSR3 mod running and AFMF, AMD Fluid Motion frames running, so you can see that in the top right corner. We get a ridiculous amount of frames that is certainly hitting our refresh rate of our 165Hz monitor, but at times you'll see it pop all the way up to even like 280, 300 Hz or 300 FPS with AMD Fluid Motion frames running. And even with FSR3 mod, the game still looks really good in my opinion, and it's super smooth. So I actually deactivated the 1% and 0.1% lows in Hogwarts Legacy because there's quite a lot of visible loading screens in this game that tank the FPS, so it's not a real indicative marker of smoothness for the game. Mainly what we're going to be looking at is, like in the top left corner, the frame time graph. You can see very few spikes as we're playing. There might be a few there, but even with those spikes, the FPS does not drop a considerable amount. I didn't see or experience really any stutters when I did this, but as you can see here, we're hitting with frame gen on, FSR3 set to quality, we're getting 80 FPS here in Hogsmeade, and double that with AFMF running. So we're going to go ahead and do this in, I'm going to go check out Hogwarts and just flying outside and let the video run just so you can see what the frames ends up looking. So here we dipped to about 60 for a little bit, but that's still 120 frames per second with AFMF. So I did do this test initially without upscaling at 1080p settings and AFMF running, and I was still able to get like 81 frames per second in Hogwarts, and that's without AFMF. In Hogsmeade we got 57, and then out and about in the world we got 48. So this is with no upscaling. So this game is definitely playable without the use of upscaling, and AFMF will just double the frame rate. And since we don't really have fast camera movements in this game, you're pretty much going to have AMD Fluid Motion frames on the whole time. But I'm just going to go ahead and let the gameplay footage on this one play the whole time. You can skip through it just to see what it looks like and what the frames are like. But you can even see in this point, fighting this frog, we're at 200 plus FPS with AFMF, and it feels super smooth.
Levioso! Defender! Repairer. Lumos.
Next up, we have Starfield running the latest version of 1.9.67 with FSR3. As you can see, we have it set to 1920 by 1080, 85% render resolution, everything set to medium, turn off motion blur. We got FSR3 on with frame generation on as well. Messing with the sharpening a little bit, it's okay. On the top right corner, we also have AFMF running, so we're getting double the frame rate too, and we're just doing this ecliptic mission here, and we're getting an average frame rate of about 100 frames per second. And as you can see in the top left corner there, the frame time graph is fairly stable, and I didn't notice any stuttering during gameplay here. What's crazy is AFMF, as long as it's running, you're essentially going to be doubling your frame rate. Now if you're doing quick camera movements or quick cursor movements, it will disable fluid motion frames, but from this real world scenario of like just sniping from this point of view, you can tell that it's staying on quite a bit. So we're almost nearing 200 FPS at that moment, but we're still hitting that high refresh rate. Had 130, 140, over 100 FPS with AFMF running. And the last game we have on the list is Witcher 3, The Wild Hunt Next Gen. And we have frame generation running on this one as well, or FSR3, full screen, 1080p, DLSS frame generation. Well, it's really FSR3 frame generation. Ray tracing is off. We have DLSS or FSR3 set to quality. Low sharpening, and everything, motion blur is off, and everything is set to ultra. Yep, everything's set to ultra here. And so FSR3, in order to get it working, the mod to get it working on Witcher 3, I had to disable MSI Afterburner. So what you're seeing in the top right corner is the overlay for AMD, and I've enabled a couple more things just so we can kind of get an idea of some more stats with the gameplay here. So what you're seeing in the FPS there does include AMD fluid motion frames. So if you want to get the base frame rate with frame generation, it's just going to be half of what you're seeing there. So we're essentially getting about 130 frames per second without AMD fluid motion frames running. With it running, like I said, we get double, and then you can see I'm shaking it here just so you can see AMD fluid motion frames shut off, and it does drop to about 130 frames per second. The gameplay is super smooth. There's no other, there is a average frame time there on the right with 4 milliseconds, so it's not bad, but more importantly, the game looks beautiful and it's so smooth to play.
Tracks blaspheming the sacred flame especially.
The light that never fades.
Ooh.
Ah!
You seen the new waitresses?
Whores everywhere. Nowadays,
No regret, capital. Last chance to surrender unorthodox books.
Never rains, does it?
Grimoires and tracts blaspheming the sacred flame especially.
What say we up over to a
On to a new game in this test suite. I got Helldivers 2 recently, and on the display here we've got camera shake strength off, 6600 XT, 1080p native resolution, full screen mode, VSync is off, and we have it on the high preset. Motion blur is off with texture quality set to high. I also have AMD fluid motion frames enabled. You can see it in the top right. It now does capture in AMD Relive capture software. So yeah, it's a pretty decent result with this game. So at 1080p native, high preset, high textures with AFMF, we average 59 frames per second with a 1% low of 49 and a 0.1% low of 43. Although with AFMF, as you'll see in the top right corner there, we do double that, so we actually averaged 120 frames per second, which is definitely in the realm of high refresh rate gaming, and it was really smooth to play. Not to mention the game looked amazing.
Have a taste of democracy! Destroy our way of life! Get some! Get some! Fire in the hole! democracy has landed. How about a nice cup of liberty? Bag's empty. Yeah! Throwing grenade! Have a taste of democracy!
Engaging terminal. Log tunnel breach.
How'd you like to taste of freedom?
I got the terminal.
Get some! Get some!
Mission is progressing.
How'd you like the taste of freedom? Bug outpost. I got the terminal.
Canister's empty.
Sending in an eagle. You man. Log tunnel breach. Back empty. Engaging terminal. New mag.
Freedom forever! Log tunnel breach.
New mag.
Mission at 20 minutes remaining.
Fire in the hole! Throwing grenade! Canister's empty!
You've done your duty. You may extract with honor.
Canister's empty!
Preparing to depart. Shuttle launch, extraction complete. Pelican 1 beginning ascent.
You have maintained our way of life.
So there you have it, guys. Not only does this build have incredible price to performance, it can also utilize the latest in AMD tech in AMD fluid motion frames, which practically doubles your frames in a lot of titles. And for no less than $435 US, taxes, delivery included. And honestly, I could have probably built this system for less than $400 US if I had purchased a 16 gigabyte DDR4 RAM kit off of AliExpress that you can readily get on sale for less than 20 USD delivered, including taxes. But mainly if I had reduced the 650 watt PSU to a 550 watt PSU, which would have been more than capable of handling the Ryzen 5 3600 and the RX 6600 XT. Both components are extremely power efficient, and the 550 watts would be more than capable of handling whatever you can throw at it. I will include some affiliate links down in the description below if you are interested in picking up any of the components that I've used in the build. If I don't have affiliate links, I will include some alternatives. They don't cost you any extra, but they will help me out. Speaking of helping me out, if you like the video, please like the video, as it really does help. And if you want to subscribe to see more content, please click on my face over here. And if you want to see more videos that I release, check out these two videos over here. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.